energy and excitement in the campaign. You know, I don't need a poll to tell me that we're moving, and we're moving every single day, and we're moving in the right direction with this campaign. You know, this is the kickoff of a 36-hour, non-stop campaign, a marathon for the middle class, where we're going to be traveling all across Iowa, not sleeping much, but traveling all over this state, talking about the things that really matter to the people of Iowa. We're going to talk about raising the minimum wage, universal health care, getting off our addiction to oil, what we need to do to send kids to college, a whole group of things, a trade policy that actually works for America. So we hope for the next 36 hours that all of you will be as energized and focused as we are. Because the crowds, the energy, I feel every single place I'm going here in Iowa. And there's so much at stake in this election. I had this experience of going home with my parents, actually, who will be here today, tomorrow, the next few days, to the little house that they brought me home to when I was born. It's a 2-room house in a mill village in South Carolina. And I was there. The neighborhood was so familiar to me because just up the street is where my grandparents lived. I loved my grandmother dearly, loved them both. But my grandmother helped raise me. And I remember spending time there. She would take us, feed us, take care of us when my parents were working. Then she'd make her way over to the mill and work her shift and come back home and do the same thing. And my grandfather, who'd been partly paralyzed as a young man when he was a boxer, he also worked at the mill. He'd make his way over. It was a little harder for him. But he usually worked the 3rd shift, the graveyard shift. And sometimes when he'd come back in the morning, we'd be waiting for him so that we could all have breakfast together. And in many ways, my own father followed very much in those footsteps because he went in mills for 36 years, 5, 6, sometimes even 7 days a week, 8 or 10, sometimes 12 hours a day. Hard, tedious work. The question is this: why did they do it? Why did my parents do it? Why did my grandparents do it? Why did your parents do it? Why did your grandparents do it? Why did they work and struggle and sacrifice? Why? They did it so that you could have a better life. They did it because they wanted to leave America, this country they love so much, better off than they found it. And that is the great moral test for our generation. You want to know what's at stake in this election? That's what's at stake in this election. Are we going to make certain that we leave America better than we found it, and that we leave our kids and our grandkids a better life than we've had? And if we're going to meet that responsibility, and we will meet that responsibility, if we're going to meet that responsibility, we have enormous challenges in front of us. We really do. Because you look at what's happening in America today. We don't have universal health care, which we desperately need. Why? I've used these things a lot. Why? We don't have universal health care because of drug companies, insurance companies, and their lobbies. Why do we have that mess of a Medicare prescription drug law? We have it because the drug company lobbyists literally wrote the thing. That's why we have it. Why do we have trade laws like NAFTA and CAFTA that have allowed American companies to take millions of jobs out of America, go someplace else, and hire people to do their work for 10 cents on the dollar? No labor standard, no environmental standard. I'll tell you why. For the glorification of corporate profit. That's why. Why have we not done anything serious about attacking America's addiction to oil and our destruction of the planet through global warming? Because of oil companies, gas companies, power companies. That's why. Why do we have a tax policy? This is an amazing thing. Why do we have a tax policy that actually gives a tax break to American companies that are taking jobs overseas? This is insanity. I mean, complete insanity. And it's not just a matter of what's happening here in America. Look at what's happening in Iraq right now. We've got a bunch of paid mercenaries roaming around over there, working for Blackwater and other contractors, making 10 times what our men and women in uniform are making. Halliburton, remember that? Cheney's old company, getting $1 billion, no bid contracts in Iraq. When will it stop? When will it stop? It'll stop, that's right, when I'm president. But it will stop when we make it stop. That's when it'll stop. It's not going to go away on its own. It's not going to go away because we're being nice to these people. The truth is, and it's time to be telling some truths. We're getting very close to the caucus now. Corporate greed is destroying the middle class, destroying American jobs, and it is stealing your children's future. Just as sure as I'm standing here. And we have to change it. And anybody who thinks that's going to happen on its own, or that we can just nice these people to death, is living in Never Never Land. We have an epic fight in front of us. We do. Here's what I believe. First of all, I'm proud of the fact that in the time I've been in public life, I have never taken a dime from a Washington lobbyist or a special interest tax. But there's a reason for that. Because I don't believe you can take those people's money and sit at a table and make a deal with them and that anything will change. I don't. If that worked, we'd have universal health care today. If that worked, we'd be attacking global warming. If that worked, we wouldn't have a trade policy that's focused on the profits of big companies instead of middle-class working Americans. It does not work. Here's the other thing. I hear other people say, well, if we just sit at the table with the drug companies, the oil companies, the insurance companies, we sit at the table and negotiate with them, give the stakeholders a seat at the table, then we'll be able to have them voluntarily give their power away. In whose world? Not in the real world. That is a complete and total fantasy. It will never happen. And let me give you an example of exactly what I mean. And a lot of you have heard about this or saw it on television. Just a few weeks ago, a 17-year-old girl needed a liver transplant. She needed it. She had health care coverage with one of the biggest insurance companies in America. But they said they wouldn't pay for her liver transplant operation. Her doctors intervened on her behalf. Her nurses intervened on her behalf. Still no response. Finally, the American people intervened. People started literally picketing and protesting in front of their offices. And after a period of time, the insurance company capitulated. They finally told the parents and the family, notified them, that they'd pay for the operation for the liver transplant. And then just a few hours later, the 17-year-old girl died because it was too late. And people say to me that what I'm supposed to do as your president is to sit at a table and negotiate with those people. Let me say this very clearly. Never. It will never happen when I am president. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fight for you. And anybody who thinks this fight is not going to happen is living in Never Never Land. We have had this happen before in American history. This is not the first time. We've had great American presidents who had some gumption and backbone and fight in them that were able to change this country. Teddy Roosevelt. Remember Teddy Roosevelt took on the trusts, busted them, broke up the monopolies, all on behalf of the American people. That was a guy that had a little backbone and guts. And then Franklin Roosevelt came along. A transformational president. Transformational. Changed this country forever. One of the great American presidents, if not the greatest American president. Here's what everybody's forgotten about Franklin Roosevelt. He was vilified by big corporate America. They hated this guy. And he used to say that he welcomed their hatred. Because what it meant is he was doing what was right. It meant he was standing up for the people that he was representing, instead of making deals with these people. And then along came Harry Truman, right? Harry Truman, I love the Harry Truman story where somebody said to Harry Truman, well, you're giving him hell, Harry. And he said, nope, just tell the truth and it feels like hell. Right? Well, it's time for us to tell the truth. And the truth is that we have a responsibility to our children, to our grandchildren,